Hi guys, welcome back aboard good old Athena for yet more DIY fun. My name is Mess, this is my fiancée Ava. Our adventure started 5 years ago when I purchased Athena. Since then I've completed all kinds of fun DIY projects like rebuilding the entire deck, building a new rudder using vacuum infusion, a very extensive osmosis treatment, painting the top sides and gutting most of the interior, and then subsequently rebuilding most of the interior of the boat. In a few weeks we'll untie the lines and start cruising full time. These tasks right here are what's standing between us and that. Now we'll have plenty more DIY stuff to do over the fall and winter in Scotland, but for now we're excited to be done with these so we get a bit of a chance to do some sailing. Refitting an old boat is a lot of work. We started out this week by laying up a single layer of glass on what we refer to as the kitchen island. We did that to add a little bit of strength to the joints, but mainly to make the surface a little bit more resistant towards impacts and bumps. I used a CNC cut template to cut holes in the cabin sole to get access to the storage below. By using a flush trimming bit and a template, all the holes in the hatches are identical and interchangeable. I could have just used a jigsaw, but with using a template it's very easy and we're 100% sure that everything fits. Ava drilled holes in the hatches while I installed the supports, and we now have access to 6 awesome little storage compartments. Ava got started sanding and prepping for paint. Our plan was to spend most of this week up at my parents' place and then take care of the last bit of painting aboard the boat while we still have the option of getting away from the fumes at night. I primed using Interprime 820. Here I'm going over a 1-part paint, which can be problematic, but I made a small test a few weeks back which turned out fine, so there's no need to sand away all of that old 1-part paint. After a quick sanding followed 3 coats of International Perfection, just like in the head. Ava then applied the last bit of KiwiGrip in the cockpit. It turned out amazing. Ava's really mastered the KiwiGrip. It's almost sad that we don't have any more areas where we need to apply KiwiGrip. The cabin sole is or used to be exposed plywood. We don't know yet how we want to finish the floor, but we do know that it's a job we're going to postpone until this winter in Scotland. To protect the plywood, I applied a single coat of primer. We decided to have a little bit of fun with the primer. Ava wanted to stencil a pattern over it with the paint. It didn't quite turn out the way we had hoped, and immediately after she finished with it, she asked me to then paint over it the next day. This is what the cabin sole looks like now. Remember, this is just temporary. It's just there until we figure out how we want to finish the floor. We also primed the floor here inside of the head, which is why there is this giant no pee warning on the door. The boat is starting to look nice and white, but it's still a little bit empty out here because all of the countertops and stuff is in the forward cabin. So why don't we bring all of that out here?
Last week when Mads was finishing the drawer fronts, I was given the task of splicing our new lifelines. Here are the results after many YouTube videos and attempts later. They're definitely not perfect and it took me a while to get a hang of, but I think for my first try, they're not too shabby and most importantly, they feel nice and strong. While we're trying to finish up some of the bigger projects on the boat, we decided to go with line instead of steel wire for a few different reasons. First off, it's a good DIY option. Even I'm able to do it after a few attempts. Second, the cost, for obvious reasons, line is a lot less expensive than steel wire. And lastly, weight. If you're performance oriented, then that's a really good option for you, but I don't know if that really applies to us and our washer and dryer down below. There are some downsides, for instance, chafing where the line goes through the stanchion. We'll have to keep an eye out for that, but we'll be rounding over the hole to help mitigate that. Another possible issue could be splicing, or in my case, learning how to splice could be time consuming, but I mean, ultimately a good skill to have. We're gonna be using 5 lines, 2 port, 2 starboard, and 1 aft. Last week I spliced eyes and low friction rings on 4 of the lines, so we just have 1 left to do, so let's go down below and do that. I'll add a link down below for the guide that I used that was really helpful in splicing this line. We use a Dyneema and it has an inner middle cover that adds an extra step to the process, and also this line is really tight, which I've found out makes it a little bit more difficult. I'm not an expert, at least not yet, so I'm not going to be giving doing a step-by-step tutorial, but there are a few things that I would like to add to the guide that might help somebody else. I don't have one, but the first thing I would find helpful is using a seam ripper to cut open the inner middle cover. I'm using these big scissors and a needle, but I'm always nervous about ruining the inner core. We're now on step 4.12 in the guide, and that's when you're gonna bury this line into this part of the line. And something that they don't mention to do, but I found really helpful, is to taper this end before you bury it in here, and that's gonna really help when it comes to milking the line. How I taper it is I pull a line from back here, pull it out, and then I go a little bit forward, pull another one out, go forward again, pull it, and then I continue to do that all the way to the top, and then I trim all these lines and it'll help taper it. Here are the results. It may not look like much, but you can definitely feel it. It's thicker down here and gets thinner towards the edge. Milking is definitely the most difficult and soul-sucking part of this process, but do not give up. You're gonna wanna give up and you're gonna think that you're not gonna be able to get it, but you can, I promise you. You just gotta keep doing it. With a little bit of perseverance and perspiration, this is what the end result looks like. It's nice and tight around the ring, and also don't forget to put your friction ring in there, which I almost did, but we got it in there and it's nice and tight. All that's left is to whip this part of the line.
Over here you can see the temporary lifeline I put in a few months back just to have something there. And then over here on the port side you can see Ava's spiffy new lifelines with the low friction rings in there. I think this looks pretty dang spiffy. So let's go ahead and repeat this process on the starboard side. Just in case you're wondering, I've left these lines here long on purpose because the lifeline is probably going to stretch a little bit over the next week or so, and I want to be able to continue tightening this. So yeah, that's why these look a little bit long for now. We've got both of the lines run through the stanchions, and then here at the pulpit we're just going to secure them with a nut. A couple of bowlines should do a great job. Those are going to be relatively easy to undo even after we've had a lot of tension on the lifeline. While I was tying the forward end, I just held the aft end in place with a little bit of line and some stir sticks, but let's get this white junk here replaced with a little bit of Dyneema. I've got a few loops connecting the low friction eye and the eye here on the arch. Now let's pull this and tighten the line. I'll just use a stir stick for the last little bit. And there we go, that should be pretty tight. This is our version of synthetic lifelines. I think they turned out pretty dang spiffy, but there are some things we could have done to make them even spiffier. Like for instance, we could have gone with another eye splice up forward instead of just a knot, but yeah, this works. It looks like we're about to get hit by some slightly wet weather, so let's head down below. The lifelines up on deck are very much a safety feature, and of course safety is very important. In about 2 or 3 weeks we hope to be ready to cross the North Sea from Denmark to Scotland. Now this will be our first passage together, and it'll be my first time taking Athena out for some serious sailing after the major refit. There are plenty of things we can do to bump up the safety factor. We can put in place some rules, like for instance the fact that you should always be clipped in when you're in the cockpit or up on deck, and also that you should never go forward unless the other person is in the cockpit. Those are of course just 2 examples. Here are some of our safety related items, like for instance our spiffy new Viking PFDs, some jack lines. This is what we'll clip into when we're going up on deck, and we'll do that using these tethers. These are from the previous owners. This is what they use to clip in when they're in the cockpit. We also have an EPIRB, a PLB, and some man overboard devices. I'm not going to install the jack lines today because we're still a few weeks away from needing them, and there's no need for these to sit and bake in the sun up on the deck. But if we can find some time in between rain showers, it would be nice to get these pad eyes installed in the cockpit. I've got 4 of these super spiffy folding pad eyes. 2 of these will secure this, which will give us a lot of freedom of movement in the cockpit while still being clipped in. But yeah, hopefully we can get back to that. For now, let's focus on this little gadget corner over here. We can put in place rules and we can make sure we clip in and do a lot of other stuff to stay safe, but we can also utilize cool and exciting gadgets like the ones I've got here. There are two sections here, kind of, in the fact that these two over here, the EPIRB and the PLB, will tell people far away from you that you're in need of assistance, whereas these guys over here will tell people closer to you that you are in need of assistance. I've had the EPIRB and the PLB for a few years. The Rescue Me MOB1 devices are a new addition. There's one for me and one for Ava. The EPIRB and the PLB over here, like I mentioned, send a signal to someone far away from you using satellite connection that you are in need of assistance, whereas these little guys here send a signal using VHF radio. Say I go overboard and I've got this little thing in my PFD. It's going to be tied into it so that when the PFD inflates, a little antenna shoots out of this. And once this has acquired a GPS signal, it'll start doing a few things. It'll transmit an AIS signal, it will do a DSC or digital select call to the VHF radio here aboard Athena, and it can also do an all ships DSC call. Although there's a little footnote here, because depending on where you're located, this device might not be allowed to do the DSC calls, so it'll only do the AIS transmissions. I will put a link down in the description where there is a definition of what this is allowed to do depending on location. But I believe the countries where this is allowed to do AIS only are something like Canada, Latvia, somewhere, and then Denmark, which is quite a bummer because I'm located in Denmark right now. Anywho, the DSC feature is kind of an additional feature. The main feature of this is the AIS transmission, and well, a lot of these MOB devices don't actually do the DSC call. This is one of the few that does. Although we can't really use it where I am right now, but it's, yeah, like I said, a nice additional feature. Real quick, if you don't know what DSC is, it is digital selective calling. It is a feature on some VHF radios. It's a way of calling a boat directly using its MMSI number. Now, I haven't tested it on ours yet, but usually when you get a DSC call, your VHF radio will start ringing with a loud and somewhat unpleasant ringing noise. There are two reasons why it might be nice to have the DSC feature this offers. One of them is legacy related, because on older chart plotters, even though you have an AIS receiver, the chart plotter might not support the AIS message this sends, meaning if this is activated, an AIS target is not going to pop up on your chart plotter. I'm sure the AIS feature is supported on all modern chart plotters, but yeah, like I said, an older chart plotter might not support it. The other reason why it's nice to have the DSC feature is just the fact that your VHF radio is going to be ringing really loud, and it is an additional way of being notified that somebody has gone overboard. If you're located somewhere where the DSC feature is available, of course you'll have to program the MMSI number you want to call into the MOB device, and you can do that using a piece of software that's available from Ocean Signal's website, which is the manufacturer of this device. Most likely based on my IP address, they have figured out that I'm located in Denmark. There is no installer available for MOB1 in Denmark. The use of DSC in MOB devices is not allowed in Denmark, and this download button does absolutely nothing. Now would have been a great time for a VPN ad, because using a VPN or a virtual private network, I can make it seem like I'm based somewhere where I'm actually not. So let's cheat a little bit. If we just do a quick jump across the North Sea and pretend like we're in the UK, then this page should change and allow us to get the configuration software. And yep, there we go. The way this is programmed is actually pretty cool. Of course, this needs to be absolutely watertight. So having a plug is, while not impossible, certainly a little bit of a challenge. So instead, for programming this, they're relying on a little optical sensor that's hiding behind here. It's this little eye hiding right here. So let's see if this will work. Apparently, you're supposed to use this little rubber adapter here to exclude external light. But first, we're supposed to set it into programming mode by clicking this for 15 seconds. Okay. Push that against the screen and hit the button. If the MOB is flashing green, programming was successful. So yeah, that seemed to work. The manual does mention not to do the DSC test too often because it consumes battery, but we should certainly test it now, seeing as it's just been programmed. Press and hold the test button, LED will flash, then release. Okay. Yep. DSC seems to work. There's also a procedure for testing the AIS transmission, so let's do that next to make absolutely sure that my chart plotter supports this, which I'm 100% sure it does. Okay, after having started the test procedure, there we can see AIS MOB test in progress. And if we zoom all the way in, I believe that should be the MOB device. I followed the instructions and installed the MOB device in this PFD from Viking. There's a little line that goes around the bladder here. When this expands, it's going to pull this little tab out and start the device, provided of course we remember to arm it. Oh, I almost forgot to put this little plastic cover on here. This is to prevent the device from accidentally being activated, so should just snap into place like that. Yep, this thing is still nice and light, and I can hardly even feel that the MOB device is hiding in here, so I'd say that's a big success. I've repeated the process for the other PFDs, so now we have 2 AIS-enabled PFDs. While dodging rain showers, I managed to install those 2 folding pad eyes here in the cockpit. The previous owner had this really cool setup with some nylon webbing between a pad eye there and then one aft in the cockpit. I was planning on installing 2 of those folding pad eyes in the aft end of the cockpit too, but there's just not enough room. Once I've gotten my hands on some regular pad eyes and installed them down there, this is roughly what it's gonna look like, and then we're gonna clip into this. We're gonna do that using a pair of these tethers, but we're not gonna be looking like that. If you like that skimpy outfit, how about these? These are ocean insulated suits from a company here in Denmark. They're not really intended for leisure sailing, they're intended for industrial use, but I think they'll be great for the boat. Even though it is still the summer, the trip across the North Sea, especially the nights, are probably going to be a little bit cold, and these suits should help with that. They are waterproof, breathable, and insulated. Most of the time, especially during the night, we're just going to be sitting out in the cockpit waiting for the time to go by, and that can get a little bit cold. I hope these are going to keep us nice and warm and dry, and that is, of course, also important from a safety point of view. We've made it to the end of the video, and as per usual, we're going to end the video by updating our little to-do board. This week we spent a lot of time painting, which we don't have a task for, but I, for instance, finished the headliner, and we do have a task for that, so there are a few things we can go ahead and close. There are 3 tasks over here we can close. That is none skip the deck. Ava finished the cockpit. That is the countertop for the freezer. That's in there, and the headliner here in the saloon, and the head.
One task we can move into the doing section, and it's a task that is really cementing us leaving, is sell the car.
There's an ex-colleague of mine, a fellow sailor, that wants to buy the car. He hasn't done so yet, that's why we're only moving the task into doing, but he should be back from sailing next week, and then we'll figure out all of the details. This is not an attempt at cheating, but there are also 2 tasks from the to-do column that we can go ahead and move out of there, because we're not going to be doing that before we get to Scotland. So one of them is to put software on the genset. That's not going to happen. The second one is to hook up the second diesel tank. I don't think we're going to do that. We're just going to carry some jerry cans in case there's a problem with the second diesel tank. I'd much rather we not have that on our maiden voyage. Once we lose the car, we'll be very limited in where we can go, so I'm kind of glad we got the painting out of the way this week, where we could go to my parents' place. So the plan for this week was originally to do the BMS and the alternator, but yeah, that's going to be pushed until, well, next week. And also next week, I've ordered all of the fittings and the hose and stuff for the pressurized water, so there's a bunch of tasks here we should hopefully be able to close. And on that hopeful note, we'll end this week's video here. We hope to see all of you guys back here aboard Athena next week for yet more DIY fun. As always, feel free to leave a comment down below, and don't forget, if you've enjoyed this video,
Please remember to leave a like.
see you!